Stories Untold is an episodic horror adventure puzzle video game developed by No Code and published by Devolver Digital. Epic Games recently made Untold Stories available for free in the Epic Games Store, so I decided to give it a go. Now I know, say what you will about the Epic Games Store and the drama surrounding its exclusives, but today we're focusing solely on this game. Untold Stories is a mostly text-based game that's comprised of 4 different episodes that each tell a separate story that's going to mold into a much bigger picture. Now this is a game that's definitely going to have you on the edge of your seat as you find yourself solving puzzles and discovering that maybe things just aren't exactly how they seem. Now, just a forewarning, this review is going to remain as spoiler-free as possible, but there may be some elements that you're going to want to uncover yourself. With that in mind, let's begin. As previously mentioned, each episode of Untold Stories has its own unique story and its own unique playstyle. Episode 1 is where the text-based portion of the gameplay comes in. You'll find yourself sitting in front of what looks like a ZX Spectrum straight out of the 1980s. You know, it actually looks particularly similar to the ZX Spectrum Plus 2, which came out in 1986, a recurring number throughout the entire game. So the game within a game's story is about a guy who comes back to his childhood home for a visit after having been gone for quite some time. You'll control the main character through a series of context-sensitive commands as you learn a little bit about this house and the character's past. Now everything seems relatively normal until the character enters a room that sounds suspiciously like the one that you're sitting in. Now this is where I'm going to allow you to discover what happens next on your own, because let's just say that things take a turn for the worse. Now there were a few times that I did find myself scratching my head and feeling a little bit lost, but I mostly chalked it up to me not having played any games like this in quite some time. My main word of advice is going to be to make good use of the command look around. That's going to save you quite a bit of time and quite a bit of frustration. Moving on, episode 2 opens with a slow zoom of a laboratory with what looks like some sort of chamber in the middle, surrounded by various machines and equipment. Experimental procedures are fed to you through a green and black terminal, and you'll have to follow a series of instructions in order to complete each experiment. The story goes, a mysterious Artifact 23 has been recovered from what is referred to as Crash Site B, and it's your job to perform experiments so that the powers that be can examine the results. At one point in the experiment, the chamber opens up to reveal what you've been running all of these tests on. I won't tell you what was inside of the chamber since I'd consider it a spoiler, but it's pretty wild. This is probably one of my favorite portions of the game, except for the ending episode, and that's just because how varied the gameplay is. You also get to feel really cool and all scientific. The third episode is the last one that I'm actually going to discuss, just for the sake of this review. I could talk a little bit about the final episode, but I really think that it's something that should be experienced going in cold. In this episode, you're in a monitoring station with a radio, a terminal, and a microfilm reader. This one's particularly cool because you get to cross-check transmissions with code words that'll give you certain commands that you input into a terminal. The idea here is that you'll receive a frequency from the terminal, which you'll input into the radio, which will then give you some sort of transmission code, which you'll use to cross-check the call sign in the microfilm, which will give you commands for the terminal in order to get another frequency. Now, if any of that seems complicated, it's because it is, but once you get the hang of it, it's really a lot of fun. And this isn't all. At one point an event will occur which requires you to manually realign the transmitters outside, which actually brings a short first-person element to the game. All in all, I would probably recommend this game more for somebody who wants a unique experience, or even somebody who has that nostalgic love for those old-school text games. I found most of the puzzles challenging, but nothing too crazy that would prevent me from recommending it. Some of the puzzles can be fairly tedious, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm just going to blame that on me not really knowing how to play the text portion. The game is pretty short, but it doesn't feel too short. It took me a little over 2.5 hours to complete. The How Long to Beat a website has it clocked in around 3 hours for a completionist playthrough, which sounds about right in my opinion. My only gripe is the overarching story. It's not the greatest, but I'd probably consider it serviceable. If you're on the fence about playing this game, I'd just give it a try. It's free and you could probably complete it in one sitting. So this concludes my take on Stories Untold. It's not the most in-depth review and not really that long. It's not really something I typically do. but I liked the game well enough that I just wanted to give my 2 cents. So if this is something that you're interested in, by all means let me know in the comments. Give me a like, subscribe, or something like that, and maybe we'll see about continuing this series in the future. Thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and take care.